Welcome to the Style Free Podcast, where a father and son detail and digress on a wide variety of topics within music, art, family, and culture. Today's episode is a special edition collaboration hosted by Andrew Beam and Corey Dempsey of Back Porch Podcast, featuring me, Dr. Steve Tyson Jr., as we discuss the top 5 hip-hop songs of 1988. This recording was previously aired on Back Porch Podcast. This recording contains coarse language.
Welcome to the Back Porch Podcast. I'm Corey Dempsey.
And I am Andrew Beam. We're here today to do sort of the second installment of the hip-hop series that we're doing. And this time we're going to be covering the best of the 1988 hip-hop era. And we're joined again here with Steve Tyson. Steve, how you doing?
Good. How are y'all doing?
Doing great, man. Steve, before we get to 1988, you have a new album. Tell us about this record.
Yeah, my album, Intellectual Property. I'm really excited about it. It's my first studio project. It's been a few years in the making, that's for sure. I started mentioning it for the first time publicly 4 years ago when I was on Sway in the Morning. And, just been spending my time making the beats and writing these songs. And, I'm very excited to put out this project. So, yeah, Intellectual Property comes out February 13th.
That's awesome, man. Did you produce all the beats yourself on that?
Yeah, I made all the beats. I also connected with some Philly artists who were able to add this extra flavor to it. So shout out to my engineer, Phil Pierce. He was also able to connect me with a keyboardist named Jeff Smith. Vince Anthony is always down to come through and just, offer insight and support. And so he's able to drop some bass lines. I've worked with Vince before. He's featured on my song Rittenhouse as a featured singer and everything. So it's exciting. I also got my lovely lady, Sarah Williams, former opera singer, singing on the song Gold too. So yeah, there's a lot of collaboration as part of this project as well.
So this episode's probably going to come out in February sometime. So, when you're able to hear this episode, make sure that weekend you go to Spotify, right, Steve?
Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal. It's going to be everywhere. You can even add it to your TikToks. There's a whole lot of different flavors on this album for sure. So
last time we hung out with you, you gave us a little sneak preview of a couple tracks, and I won't say too much, but we're definitely excited to hear what you have to put out for us, man.
I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so last time we talked about 1994. That was my personal choice for my favorite year in hip-hop. And on that episode, we kind of teased at the end that we would be doing a follow-up with 1988. And Steve, 1988 was your choice. So why don't you tell us about that year, why it's so important, why it's your favorite, all that stuff, man.
So hip-hop as a culture is like maybe 15 years old at this point. It was the moment where we were already getting into, and I say we, as like a member of hip hop culture, even though I was only 3 years old in 1988, but nonetheless, we were entering a space in the era where, now we have, major label placements and we have a bigger budget behind some of these projects and some of these ideas that artists were having that were able to set the foundation for being able to embellish upon the stories and storytelling that is in songs. But that's just one micro moment of just a variety of different things, in addition to just also having the space and place socially and culturally in America to be able to have the platform to speak on things that ended up having a greater ripple effect. The year 1988 was able to kickstart and able to set in motion for the upcoming years ahead as far as how hip-hop culture was ultimately and is ultimately perceived nationally and globally.
Yeah, I've always said this and I've always felt this, about my personal feelings is 1994 is my favorite year, but 1988 is like the most capital I important year for hip-hop.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, it comes in a couple different ways. I feel like production takes a huge leap forward in this year, and you get a lot of people like Eric Sermon from EPMD kind of changing the way that hip hop production is. He's the first one to really take like a funk loop and just loop it through a whole song and just one continuous thing. And that influenced a lot of production afterwards, I feel like. And then this is also the year that you get Rakim, who might be the only one to ever like perfect the art of rapping.
It's wild to think, like, listening to him, it's like So this laid the groundwork of kind of what we're hearing now, or just like so many different hip hop artists that you're going to hear in the future. They're going to take his style from that, like, and that's why, like, going through it for me, listening, like, he was a standout for me. Like, oh man, that there's just something about it that made you just feel good listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, like, as far as the technique of rapping, I don't think anyone who is a rapper can deny the influence that Rakim had, and that was also this year. So I feel like both in the production and the rapping sense, just the musical art form took a huge leap forward in this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Especially acknowledging Rakim and as far as, like you're saying, like perfecting the art of rapping. I mean, they're like, as far as like the skill and technique of rapping too, and in creating ways that other folks done. We're definitely going to get into a lot of those details, but I mean, there's the production, the lyricism, the opportunity. I think even for women in rap in '88 was also really important. So thinking about like JJ Fad, like Supersonic, or all the songs that MC Light was on, and that, you know, a lot of representation and a lot of, again, opportunities that was also able to be had throughout '88.
Yeah, for sure. As we were kind of talking about, this is sort of the year where hip hop kind of broke through, and
I would absolutely agree. And I just sort of think it's ironic to think about how, I don't know if you would say it built up brick walls, just because I know of the lawsuits that led to what occurred during this year. But which, like, I read that and I was like, because that was the first time I had known about, I forget what was the name of the case that, like, pretty much made the decision on how samples were being cleared and what have you, or basically made it more complicated.
I don't know, Steve, do you know?
I don't know the name of the law or like the legal thing that happened, but I definitely know that De La Soul was crushed, you know, because of their samples of, you know, the Turtle. Whenever they used their music in 3 Feet High and Rising. Like, '88 was also a wild year too, with the fact that not necessarily that it was like sampling without impunity, but, you know, there was a lot of the opportunity in people, you know, being able to use and manipulate records without as much legal implication as you definitely have to go through now when it comes to sample clearance and stuff, and rightfully so whenever you're using the artistic creations of other people. But I mean, some of these legal things that have gone on as far as whenever it comes to sampling are definitely, some of it is like too far and beyond, and definitely also lends toward more of the record labels and their greed rather than even the artists who created the music in the first place. Yeah, but I mean, like, it's definitely artists like De La Soul and the legal backlash against sampling impacted them. Definitely had an impact on artists like Public Enemy and production crews like the Bomb Squad and their use of sampling and how they were able to create their sonic palette and how they had to find new ways of then adjusting to a lot of the legal things that were going on in counter to where hip hop's creativity was going.
And maybe we could say that they've broken through walls or gone around them is maybe more the way. So in the last one, we did a nice shout out for the Master P record. Are there any acknowledgments either of you would like to give this time around? Any special shout outs before we get going?
So I have one. The Salt and Pepper record is called Assault with a Deadly Pepper. And I thought that was a fantastic album name. It is salt with a deadly pepper. That's fantastic stuff. Great job, Salt and Pepper.
Excellent wordplay.
Really great. Yeah, Steve, what do you got?
It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy. It's probably one of my favorites. The Great Adventures of Slick Rick, I think, is another.
My other one that I just wanted to shout out real quick, and Steve, I hope this doesn't step on your toes. The beat DJ Jazzy Jeff did for Time to Chill. That is the most fun beat that I have ever heard.
That doesn't step on my toes for my top 5 at all. I mean, I think that DJ Jazzy Jeff is such a underrated producer in hip hop. His work with Will Smith is just absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, it's legendary shit. So,
what do you think did it? Was it just Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and just him getting tossed out of the house by Uncle Phil each episode, or
no? This is well before that.
Right.
I mean, I shouldn't say well before. It was only a year before Fresh Prince, but like a year or two before it. But like going back to, you know, Rakim and his presence, like their biggest hit was Will Smith imitating Rakim with Summertime. He's 100% imitating Rakim's flow And it's acknowledged as such that that's exactly the lane he went with that song, and that's their biggest hit. So
with that, let's just get into the top 5 because I anticipate a robust discussion.
I actually kind of want to know, is like just doing the research for it. Like, Steve, what was it like to kind of do this exploration as compared to, like, say, doing the 94 one?
Oh, this is the year in the music that really immersed me within hip hop culture, without question. All of the artists, all of the music, all of the imagery. This year, though, for me is the year for me whenever it comes to who I am and why I am whenever it comes to hip hop, and what laid the foundation for everything that I do musically, as well as what I teach whenever it comes to teaching about hip hop and
I was going to say
everything.
I can hear you in a lot of this, like and I'm saying like your style, your flow, like a lot of it. I can definitely feel the influence that it's had on you in your music.
Yeah, most definitely. And like, even though I was born in '85, my foundation when it comes to hip hop is '88.
We unfortunately missed it. I missed it. I was born in '88. It just came out.
88 for me represents like my education phase in hip hop. I came into it later, and then I went back and listened to all of these old records. And when I was kind of exploring that and listening to all these old records, I was amazed at the time by how I kept going back to all these classics, and it's like 1988, and it kept happening over and over again. And I was like, oh, I guess this is a pretty important year. So yeah, I think then let's go to our top 5, Steve, and we're going to go back and forth as we did on the 1994 episode. We are going to play the songs on our end, and you'll hear little snippets. So, Steve, who do you want me to kick it off? You want to kick it off? What do we want to do here?
I mean, it's your show. By all means, kick it off.
All right. My number 5 track, and I'm going to I'll talk about it afterwards. I don't want to give too much of an introduction, but my number 5 is Children's Story by Slick Rick.
Once upon a time, not long ago, when people wore pajamas and lived life slow.
When I first heard this song and it came on in the playlist that I got from both of you guys, I was like, what the fuck? Montel Jordan's on this list? How did this happen? And then I'm like, oh, right.
Yeah, so with this song, and Steve, please correct me if I'm wrong here, or give me a counterpoint, but I feel like Slick Rick is the godfather of the storytelling rap song.
Such a good song.
I mean, he's definitely the preeminent person when it comes to that, for sure. And yeah, Godfather be good. And this is also my number 5 song too. So,
oh, nice. Nice.
Yep.
Just, you weren't going to say anything until now, I guess. Just
I had a couple thoughts with this. The first was that Slick Rick is the godfather of the storytelling rap song, and Lottie Dottie, I think, was the first one in 1985, the one that he did with Dougie Fresh, and then I think I don't want to say perfected it, but then he took it to another level with this song. And I think, there's kind of 2 parts to this for me. And the first part is the influence that Slick Rick had and the influence that Children's Story had. And you have so many artists afterwards covering very directly this song. So Black Star did it on their record. Snoop Dogg did it with G Bedtime Stories on his record. So there were the direct covers, and then there were, people who took parts of his flow on this song and then incorporated it in their own songs. So like Jay-Z on 99 Problems, when he says Once Upon a Time Not Long Ago, and then, that is directly from this song. And so you see Slick Rick's direct influence in that way, but then he also influenced it with just the storytelling style, and that influenced then some of the greatest rap songs in history, I think, like Ice Cube's It Was a Good Day, and Notorious B.I.G.'s I Got a Story to Tell, and a lot of Notorious B.I.G.'s songs, but this storytelling style then just kept getting used over and over again, and to great effect, and it kind of all started with Slick Rick, so I had to include him in this.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I think that this is perfect storytelling, like an example of that, especially in like the early eras of hip hop. But even to I almost went on a bit of a tangent there. So anyway, I think that, the story that also is within this song is definitely still relevant today too. Like you have that tale of a kid who's trying to figure his way through a bunch of bullshit that the system and, you know, all the other layers of socioeconomic traps and pitfalls cause for so many folks. You know, it's just the pattern and a story in that story is definitely still relevant in so many ways today. And then you talk about musically, you know, being relevant today too. Theme, you're just talking about how, like, you know, Montel Jordan, this is how we do it.
We don't need to,
you know,
like,
all
I
the
felt
other...
that wasn't fair to Slick Rick in this moment. I mean, I know, like, I mean,
Nah,
no, this is how we do it as a jam.
This is how we do it. It's classic.
No, I agree, but, like, sorry, it fell out of line for a second.
Shall not shade that song.
No, I'm not going to shade that. All right, you know what? Digging myself a hole. I'm going to back right out.
But also, like, you know, everything that you're talking about, Corey, with all the other examples of reinterpretations of it and all, like, even another recent example is with Nas and Kanye with Cop Shot the Kid, where it's, you know, even more of a direct use of the sample, and yet it highlights the relevancy of the same story in, I guess that was in 2018, but still nonetheless in today's time. And, you know, even when it comes to samples too, you know, this has James Brown elements of that in it. It also has Bob James' Nautilus sampled in it. There's a lot within this song that touches back to things that have existed before it, but also are still, again, musically and story-wise relevant very much today.
Yeah, for sure. And I picked out one line that I think it's the ending of the song. And Slick Rick says, he dropped the gun and so went the glory. And this is the way I have to end this story. He was only 17 in a madman's dream. The cop shot the kid. I still hear him scream. This ain't funny, so don't you dare laugh. Just another case about the wrong path.
Yep.
And it's all those things that you were exactly saying. And, you know, that was the line that stood out to me. And it's made very clear in the song that the kid dropped his gun, and yet the cops still shot him. And like you said, that's very, very relevant. And the story still resonates now.
Absolutely. And it's like, and even like context in the beginning of this song too, where it has these children, it's called Children's Story.
Yeah.
So not only is it a story that he's telling to kids, because they're asking, can you tell us a bedtime story? And this is the story that he's sharing, but then it's also the story of this child. The kid was 17. He's a child, both legally and just in the fact that he's a kid. And so, yeah, it's definitely children's story in two different contexts as well too. It's an incredible song. It's definitely top 5 for me as well.
Just love that piano. Like, it just kind of creeps throughout the song, and I love it.
It's a great beat. Really great.
In terms of storytelling songs, like, obviously this being sort of the jump off what a lot of people are influenced by, has anyone outdone it? Or do you think there is one that is better than it? Or is there the best one? In terms of, like, a really good sort of, like, out of the ones you guys just kind of mentioned, like, you know.
I mean, I think that there's a top tier. There's definitely a top tier, and this is in that, if not a crown jewel in that, because it birthed and created, I mean, inspired so many other stories. But I would more say there's a top tier, and in that you have examples like Corey mentioned with Notorious B.I.G.'s I Got a Story to Tell, or Jay-Z's Meet the Parents. Other, you know, top tier stories, Nas, and it's so many stories you could pull from Nas' catalog. But yeah, for sure.
I think this might have to be a separate episode. Top 5 storytelling tracks.
Storytelling, yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I'd be down for that. I fucking love a good story.
Yeah.
I love a good story. They are my favorite types of songs, the story rap songs.
Before we go on to 4, like, do we have a different one on this one, or?
What do you mean?
Like, do we have different 4s? Do we know? Should you guys?
I don't know.
No
do
idea.
You guys want to talk?
We no. This is very in the moment. So, Steve, that was I announced my number 5. It happened to be the same as yours. So you go with your number 4.
All right. So I will say that my number 4 song of 1988 is N.W.A. Straight Outta Compton.
Straight Outta Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube.
That's my number 1.
Wait, you're just gonna reveal your number 1 right here?
We said it.
We still got a few more to go. You'd be like, it's in there. We'll get there.
Nah, I mean, that's my number 1.
Straight Outta Compton is my number 4 just because it introduced, like, Compton, LA, reality rap to the rest of the world. I mean, the rest of the world knows, or a lot of people know, reality rap is gangster rap because the media and the news and everything like that. Being able to express story, you know, not only is just this song an introduction to, you know, the storytelling of Ice Cube, MC Ren, the DOC, but It tells the story of so many other people who didn't have the opportunity to tell their stories. Hip hop up until this point, and for a lot of it was, you were starting to get some of like the gritty reality and what's happening in the East Coast in this same year, and for a lot of East Coast artists. But whenever it comes to what's going on West Coast and coming out of the West Coast, this definitely is the song that introduced and opened the doors for everything and everybody that we have coming out of Compton and coming out of LA today. I mean, this is Dr. Dre, so there'd be no Snoop, there'd be no Kendrick Lamar, there'd be no Terrace Martin, there'd be no, all of these folks who've been inspired and influenced by this. And this song could just as easily be my number one. So that's the thing about these top five also. Any one of these could be my number one. That's why it took me forever to figure out what my top five was up until 5 minutes before we started recording this.
Which is
because it's like, there were so many reasons. And
when you told me that last night, you were like, I don't have my top five yet. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
All right, well,
yeah.
Good luck.
And it might change tomorrow, but as far as up until the day of us recording this and how it's gone, my top five songs, like Straight Outta Compton has to be in that. There's so much that comes from it.
Steve, everything that you just mentioned about Straight Outta Compton, I'm totally on board with. I think for me, the reason why I chose it at number one is because I spent a lot of time thinking about N.W.A. and their music in 2020, and specifically around the murder of George Floyd and all the Black Lives Matter protests.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about all the controversy that existed with N.W.A.'s record, specifically around Fuck the Police. And, when I thought about that, it just immediately made me very angry, like N.W.A. was, that why don't we just listen to what they have to say instead of Tipper Gore trying to censor them, instead of the FBI trying to shut them down? Why don't we listen to them as legitimate people with something to say who are reporting on this? So that idea of reality rap that you mentioned is, I think, so prescient and I think so relevant today. And that's why for me it just immediately came to mind as the best song of 1988, just because I spent so much time thinking about their music this year.
That's a really good point. And I think that also is the same point that informs my number one. So we'll get to that in a bit too. But yeah, it's still very relevant right now. It definitely addresses what we're still going through. Like, have we listened to a lot of these folks back then and made actual change instead of fighting against? We talk about, the legal fight that hip hop had musically whenever it came to sampling, but it was also going through a lot of legal fights lyrically whenever it came to just what stories are being told. And N.W.A. was going through that fight, because of, the reality that they were expressing. 2 Live Crew was going through that fight because of the reality that they were expressing, even though it was definitely in a different lane than N.W.A. But nonetheless, it was still an honest and authentic reality for a lot of folks, and sometimes an embellished reality, but a reality nonetheless. And, there was legal and governmental backlash against that. And we have folks now going through so much social and political and systemic oppression. Songs are definitely still relevant today. It could have been Straight Out of Charlottesville or, Straight Out of Ferguson. It definitely connects. I mean, Fuck the Police could have just been just as easily as this could have been. But to also your point about introducing oneself, I think that's why I ended up leaning towards Straight Outta Compton over Fuck the Police.
Exactly. And I think about those as kind of companion tracks. First you have to get Straight Outta Compton. It's this group announcing themselves, and then you get kind of their political statement once they've introduced who they are.
It laid the foundation, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think with 2 of those things, so we talked about this on the 1994 episode, this idea of MCs introducing themselves. We talked about it with Thuggish Ruggish Bone. We talked about it with Lady of Rage. We talked about kind of that trope, and I think this is the best example of that. And I think there's 2 things. So
it's the
Dr.
most
Dre,
impactful, that's for certain.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And Dr. Dre opens the song with, "You're about to witness the strength of street knowledge." He starts it with this mission statement for the group. And then you get Ice Cube coming in, just boom, tearing the roof off with a crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube. And, then he goes into his next line and talks about, having a sawed-off shotgun and the body's getting hauled off, and it's also threatening. And just that idea of just announcing yourself to the world in that way, it's great stuff.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
I just think it's, yeah.
Sorry,
and because I was hearing this on both your lists, because I know both Fuck the Police and Straight Outta Compton were on yours. And I was like, it was one of those where I heard Straight Outta Compton. I'm hearing just kind of everyone doing their introductions and that's immediately what I thought was from that discussion of just being like, if I've ever heard one just like kind of really making a statement, this is one of those songs. And then like a few tracks later, it came on Fuck the Police. And I'm like, but what are they going to do about this one? Because like that one, just in a historical context, I feel like carries a ton of fucking weight too. I mean, so does Straight Outta Compton, but Fuck the Police just, I mean, in terms of just sort of catching people's attention, I think took it a little further.
And it's globally relevant right now, too. I mean, look what the police are doing in Nigeria right now against citizens trying to protest and have their voice heard. So, yeah, fuck the police is very relevant internationally.
Yeah, and I want to leave with one thing. It's a quote that Shea Serrano had. He wrote it in the Rap Yearbook, and I know I quote it a lot, but that's because Shea Serrano really knows what the fuck he's talking about.
You're looking at me because you know I'm aware of how much you love Shea Serrano.
I think everyone's aware at this point. I've referenced him like 4 times now.
I think you guys need to get like a drink or have some dinner sometime.
That would make my life.
All right, go ahead, say the quote.
So he said, Straight Outta Compton was not the first gangster rap record, but it was the one that fully bent the trajectory towards reporting the dejection and desolation of the inner cities. And I think that's what makes N.W.A so important, is that, and gangster rap is a term that got put on it by other people. What Steve said up front, reality rap, is far more accurate to what it actually is, but just reporting on what's happening in the world, and just that idea of like why we need to listen to what these artists have to say.
Well, it's fucking ridiculous too, because I know just even from from being a reporter too, and like hearing those stories and knowing those things, and it's like you have these conversations with people outside of that realm that just read it and just read about stories that like this in the news. You know what they're saying on the song, like shit, this shit's happening, but to other, just to literally ignorant white folks that just like are only going to think like, no, this is just fantasy shit. They're just saying this isn't true. There's no way this is real, and it's like we're all just saying, like that's still relevant today. It's fucking ridiculous, and thanks for the advent of like phone camera, cameras on your phone. Now you're like, no, we have fucking evidence of this, but it's still always the, well, how long is the video? But either way, it's weird to think where it's like you guys are saying, reality rap, but to a lot of people too, and in terms of the backlash it got, it's because they think it's some sort of fantasy, and that's the worst, that's the tragedy of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who want to ignore realities of people's existence, and there's always going to be that moving goalpost. That well, we didn't have video. Well, how long is the video?
Exactly,
it's always going to be something.
It's ridiculous, but
it's ridiculous, and it's very unfortunate and sad and angering and all those things. But
it's all I can think of when I listen to that.
And it's as American as apple pie.
Yep, that's sad stuff. All right, so I'll go to my number 4. Steve, I do anticipate this is gonna be on your list. Maybe not. I don't know. We have no idea what each other's lists are.
It almost feels like you should have talked, because then maybe we could have just this almost felt like it could have been the collaborative one where you guys had to politic over what took what place.
We might do that on a future episode. I don't know.
It's feeling like
it. So my number 4 is My Philosophy by Boogie Down Productions.
Excellent choice. That is my top honorable mention.
Top honorable mention. All right.
It's the most important song for me as a person when it comes to hip hop, hands down. It's my number 1 hip hop song, my favorite hip hop song of all time, for me personally. But when I have to think about songs of 1988 and the full on magnitude of everything, I can't just think about me.
Let us begin. What, where, why, or when will all be explained like instructions.
My Philosophy, Boogie Down Productions.
Yeah, so Steve, you mentioned that this is kind of the reason you started rapping. Tell us about its influence on you.
So I'm glad that you included it in your top 5, because I felt some type of way leaving it out of my top 5. But yeah, I mean, this song, definitely shout out to my dad, Steve Sr. I mean, he is an educator and a painter, and he also inspired by a lot of different music. And so being 3 years old and Yo MTV Raps is coming into existence, and he's sitting me on his knee and we're watching music videos, and he's immersing me in different mixtapes that he's recording off radio shows. It inspired me so much because one, like, I was born in the Bronx, but was growing up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania at the time. And so I'd always had this like narrative of like, we're from New York, we were born in the Bronx, but yet, we're out here now, and, out in this very white, very rural area of Pennsylvania. So it was always this longing and like this desire for connection to this place I was born, but also the same place that birthed, the culture that I was most connecting to at that time too. There wasn't a lot of other kids that looked like me in Johnstown, and even getting older, getting into elementary school, middle school, and before I moved out of there, things that I was into were always perceived as like bad, that's negative, that's this, that, and the other because it was hip hop or because it was black. But this song was the first thing that really helped me build the internal understanding of who I am, counter to a lot of stuff that I was either hearing from the society around me or a lot of my teachers who were racist or other kids who would say racist stuff because their parents were teaching them all types of things. So this song, my philosophy kept me grounded and kept me connected to how I identified myself as the person. As I got into hip hop, as far as like an artist and a musician, it was interesting hearing how much of what I was rapping about or why I'm rapping in general was based around, this song and its message. And so there's so many lyrics and messages that are within it that are so relevant to not just myself growing up and myself just as a black man in America, but also just seeing myself in hip hop and also using it as that shield and that armor whenever I was going through a lot. Yeah, it's song's critical for me personally.
Sure you don't want to put on your top 5?
Nah, it's the most honorable of mentions any one song could get. That's why it's the king of my honorable mentions.
Fair enough.
So I have a few lyrics that I picked out, but now I'm kind of curious, what are some of the lines that stand out to you when you say that about inspiring you?
The first one you could probably think about is like, I'm not white or red or black, I'm brown from the boogie down. Because one, I'm a brown guy from Boogie Down Bronx, but also like, I'm definitely a black man, but also multicultural too. And so I always felt like that representation, being black, being Puerto Rican, having Dominican heritage and also having significant Irish heritage too. So it's just a lot of mix and connection. And so that line being stuck in my head and going into school, facing bullies or just dealing with bullshit, was critical for me. So that's the first line. But there's so many in there. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the ones that I always really liked and the one that stood out to me is some MCs be talking and talking, trying to show how black people are walking, but I don't think this way to portray or reinforce stereotypes of today. Like all my brother eat chicken and watermelon, talk broken English, and drug selling. And I like that he took the time to kind of just go and break down some of those stereotypes that exist and, things that I'm sure you had to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. I like those lyrics a lot. It connects to, some of my experiences. We talked about Straight Outta Compton being an introduction. And even though KRS-One had been on the scene for a little bit and BDP had been on the scene for a little bit, this is definitely the introduction of who we know of as KRS-One today. For sure. I mean, because he's also critiquing current hip hop at that time. Exactly like you said, talking broken English, but also like, see, I'm telling the teacher pure facts. The way some acting rap is kind of whack. It lacks creativity and intelligence, but they don't care because the company's selling it. So relevant to right now. We've seen so many videos of rappers literally dancing on tables in boardrooms of record companies to get contracts and stuff. And it's just like the fact that 30 some odd years later, people still are tap dancing for record contracts because it's what companies know will sell, or it definitely connects and stretches through time. And I also like the fact that he references also eating right. And, this is well before the push and the boom of vegetarianism and veganism and things of that nature. And he's talking about, here at first, from an intelligent brown man, a vegetarian, no goat or ham or chicken or turkey or hamburger. Because to me, that's suicide, self-murder. Come on. Like, it's so ahead of its time in the 80s and also so relevant right now. I love the song.
For sure. And I picked out this one quote that I was reading on Hip Hop Golden Age. And it said, if hip hop were politics, KRS-One would be president. And I immediately picked that out and I was like, yep, that sounds about right. Because when you think about his place in hip hop, he is kind of the ultimate teacher, the ultimate politician, like all that political rap. Like Tupac doesn't exist without KRS-One. Kendrick Lamar doesn't exist without Tupac, so he doesn't exist without KRS-One either. He set the stage for all of those that came after him.
Absolutely. Myself included. not just as an MC and in the message, in the music and everything like that, but also everything I do for hip hop culture when it comes to teaching kids about the history of hip hop and the teenagers that created it and how it got around the world and how it's used in so many political movements and social movements and musical movements that have been happening in so many different countries and cultures. And whether you're in sixth grade or you're in college, there's so much information that folks need to know whenever it comes to hip hop and hip hop culture. In addition to just adults and everybody who's already in existence and knowing about hip hop and not knowing about its true roots. And that's all inspired because of this song and because of KRS-One, who even today are doing lectures at universities and doing their own lectures within the Temple of Hip Hop, which is one of his organizations. Just to continue to impart wisdom and knowledge and understanding about the roots of culture and peace, unity, love, having fun, and its expression through all the elements of hip hop culture. And, the most important one being the knowledge, and this is coming directly from the teacher. So, yeah.
Let's go to your number 3 then.
So getting back to the top songs of 88, so I think that number 3 would be connecting back with reality and what was going on at the time. In addition to just some immaculate production, and we talk about sampling and just, intricate and introspective lyricism, it would be Public Enemy's Night of the Living Basshead.
Here it is, bam! And you say, God damn, this is a dope jam.
I was hoping you'd pick that one.
So Public Enemy is also on my list. I did not choose that song. Steve, why'd you go with the Night of the Living Bassheads?
I went for this one because, I think that it's probably the most important song on It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, because it's talking directly around the ravages of crack and the whole crack epidemic and how it was affecting the Black community. And it was also known as like freebasing. And so that's where you get the name Bassheads from. The music video in itself, too, it's based around like the news outlet thing. It features MC Lyte as Flavor Flav, obviously, is being a character visually, as well as Chuck D's lyrics, just directly and poignantly talking about everything that's going on and how the crack epidemic is affecting us. And parallels to how heroin is, ravaging so many communities, Black, white, and America. It's crazy. And so it's definitely something that's also still very much relevant to today. So that's why I put it in my top 5. But then you also get musically with, the Bomb Squad, and their production on the song is absolutely incredible. There's like 20-something samples in the song. It kicks off with Khalid Muhammad and that powerful message. It's such an impactful and powerful and dope traditional boom bap hip hop record for sure.
Yeah, dude, that beat, like, that hits you hard. Like, to me, it's not like it's not an introduction song, but it just kind of felt like that the way that it opens up with it. But
yeah, and Beam, when we were listening, you pointed out that horn in the background that's constantly going off, and I think I think that provides a sense of urgency to the song. Yeah. Because it's kind of like just always there in the background, almost like an alarm going off or like a police siren or whatever. It
makes me feel like I'm in like 28 Days Later, and like Chuck D's just like in the middle of chaos, just spinning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really great beat. The samples, like you said, Steve, are perfect. Steve, you also mentioned that the Bomb Squad, this was your favorite produced record of the year.
I mean, it's just, they were able to just freely dig through a music that preceded them to create this sonic landscape where certain horn samples sound like, a siren and, an emergency, or the way that the bass hits you and like the drums kick in. It's like, oh shit, that's driving you forward too. There's just the music and the musical palette that they had. Like, Hank Shackley is just absolutely incredible as a producer. And I feel the Bomb Squad is just the truth, for real. I mean, you talk about Ice Cube and how he leaned on them whenever he went solo after leaving N.W.A. They're everywhere.
It blows my mind, the ability, because there is something about it. I don't know if it's patience or just what it is or knowing what to look for, but being able to listen to a song, and like you said, having these vast musical palettes, and being able to just to pick out that one sound and being able to sort of either loop that, cut that, and just do whatever. The way that they modify those sounds, like, that's when I was like just sort of thinking, like, when this, I should probably just look up the fucking court case, but like, when that was decided, and obviously putting these restrictions on the ability to sample, it's almost just sort of thinking like, Yes, like they obviously pulled from something that they liked, a sound they heard that they wanted, but it almost just like they made it something totally different than its original form, and that it's just but in that in and of itself is just such an amazing ability.
Totally agreed. So my number 3 is my personal choice. I mentioned this before, maybe when we were offline, but I kind of have one in my top 5 that maybe doesn't belong here, but it means a lot to me. I love it a lot. And that is Stetsasonics Talking All That Jazz.
Well, here's how it started. Heard you on the radio, talking about rap, saying all that crap.
Excellent choice.
I knew a Stetsasonic song was going to be on here, at least on your list. Very happy that it was this one too. I mean, I wouldn't have known which one to pick, but it's just the way the lyrics on this too, I think kind of what sold in that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this choice needs a little bit of context, so I'm going to give a little bit of background about the story. So basically, James N.W.A, a jazz musician, went on a New York radio show, and he was raising some objections about rap music and how they were sampling a lot of these songs. And then the Stetsasonic rapper Daddy-O went on to the show and took the position of kind of defending hip-hop. And in the aftermath of that, we got this song. And so that is kind of where the whole concept comes from, about people talking all that jazz about hip-hop. And, you know, I just wanted to point out kind of the opening line that they use for this song, because I think it kind of perfectly encapsulates that. Sorry. He says, well, here's how it started. Heard you on the radio talking about rap, saying all that crap about how we sample. Give an example. Think we'll let you get away with that? You criticize our methods of how we make records. You says it wasn't art, so now we're going to rip you apart. And so I love this idea of creating a hip-hop song, defending the art form, and then centering it around such a jazz-centric sample with the bass line that he has. And then he also sampled the drums from James N.W.A.'s Juicy. So he took this guy's song and he sampled it about his song defending rap. And that's just incredible stuff.
That's like that's almost like a diss track, but like not trying to be. It's like
it's not
it's
like
shots
overt.
fired.
Yeah, it's definitely firing shots and just incredible stuff by them. I just love that they did that. It seems like a big fuck you, and I respect it.
Yeah, that line.
Yeah,
that line that stands out to me was just like, yeah, you said it wasn't art, so now we're gonna rip you apart. It's just like, okay, like it's a really good line of just being like, all right, strap in.
Yeah,
we're now about to tell you off.
Yeah, Steve, what were you saying?
This song definitely is worthy of top 5 placement for sure. I mean, it's another song that's in my honorable mention for its influence definitely on me. Similarly to my philosophy, this song had another early impact on me as far as my appreciation of beat making, production, and like an understanding a bit of a story behind it. Not only just like learning as a kid of this story about N.W.A and feeling this way about hip hop. And it's funny too, because N.W.A's song or Juicy Fruit was also used by Biggie for Juicy, which I think was in our top 5 for 94, wasn't it?
That was number 1, man.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's very funny how it's like things kind of come around. But yeah, I mean, in what you mentioned as far as like the music being jazz focused, like, you know, it highlights the importance of sampling, not just in creativity and creative expression, but also in, you know, being like a time capsule and a preserver of different sounds and music and cultures and artists from years prior who that might have been forgotten. So another line of the song is, tell the truth, James Brown is old till Eric and Rock came out with I Got Soul. Like, because it's true, like James Brown as a public figure had kind of fallen by the wayside a bit. And it wasn't until he started getting sampled extremely heavily in hip hop, in addition to the Rocky IV movie, that Living in America.
Yep. What was his name? The Russian that kills
Drago.
Drago.
Yeah. Drago kills Apollo. Yeah.
Comes out to that song and then gets fucking killed.
Exactly. But that song helped put James Brown back on the map, and so like they're even acknowledging the impact of sampling as well too. So yeah, I love this song. I think it's a great choice.
So I do want to just do a quick aside right here, because we've been talking about it quite a bit throughout this episode about sampling and how things kind of got restricted here. And I just want to, Steve, I want to get your take on, do you feel like, I'm trying to see how to phrase this, because I see where these artists are coming from. Their music is getting sampled, people are making money off of it, and they're not seeing anything from it. But at the same time, it puts such a restriction on things. So, like, was it right to do this? Where do you stand on it?
But when it comes to just the art of sampling in general,
Or maybe just sort of the responsibility of it, or just in terms of like who might owe what and in what way, and because I always kind of wondered, like, couldn't it be just an agreement between two artists where it's like it just gets hashed? I mean, I know that's a utopic sort of, like, a utopian just sort of dream,
Vision,
but like, I don't know, but yeah, I am curious, like, how do you feel, say, like the original artist that they're getting sampled from, how should they be either recognized, compensated, or just how should this whole transaction work?
I mean, how should it work? I mean, it definitely gets very utopian. I mean, ideally, it's the artists or the representatives of the artists coming to an amicable agreement that works well for both parties, financially and otherwise. But the biggest issue in making that happen is record companies and record labels.
I was just going to ask that. Is it the record
the
company
legality around that? Like, I mean, and also like management. Yeah, it all ties in at the end of the day to just the business of music. And everybody should be rightfully compensated for their creations and how their creations have influenced other things, especially if they're drawing directly from it, or using it directly, or if other people are using it directly. But I mean, at the same time, nothing exists in a vacuum. So everything has been influenced and used as samples in so many different ways, in so many different contexts. So, I mean, it's similar to like, writing an academic paper. A lot of lit reviews aren't your words. Most of it, it's mostly the words of other people. And then you're just citing where those sources come from. Exactly. And so that's why we miss liner notes and a lot of those things now whenever it comes to music and how we're consuming popular music and everything. So, yeah, making sure those sources are cited, so to speak, is critical and also compensated is critical in my opinion.
Yeah, I almost feel too, like, I don't know. Maybe it's not like note for note, but it happens in rock music all the time too. If you think of like later, even sort of like grunge era rock bands, like Pearl Jam straight up admitted, like, Alive, the lick from that is pulled from something from Kiss. Like that's they're not saying it's like an exact rip off, but it's like, and I know that those
it's sampling.
It is, right? And you're flipping it, you're making it your own, you're messing with the sound with it, whatever. But yeah, it isn't applied in the same way. Definitely.
No, and Steve, the point you were making at the end there about how James Brown was then brought back into kind of the public eye because his songs were being sampled so widely, you'd think that some kind of amicable solution could be made, because not only the sample is benefiting the rapper, the hip hop artist, the R&B artist, whoever's using it in the beat, but it's also benefiting that person, because as long as they're credited appropriately, then people are like, oh my God, that's a dope song. And like, this happens all the time. There's these playlists that exist that are just like, where did these hip hop samples come from? And then they just play those songs. I remember being at a brewery recently, and they just had a playlist going of the original tracks that hip hop songs sampled. And I loved it. It was amazing. I can't even remember, but yeah, I mean, it does that as well as it brings people to an attention about their music as well. So you'd think some kind of amicable solution could be met.
I also think too, like when you're talking about like it in terms of any sort of publicity that you're doing around it, owing the success of a song or something, and at least talking about it enough, like maybe it doesn't have to be contractual. It's like in terms of like, again, this sort of utopian vision of just being like, yeah, the reason why this, you're probably connecting with the song so much is because of this particular, kind of like when we say just kind of random horn sounds or whatever. If it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would appreciate a song as much. And two, I think, pay homage to it.
And then it also comes back to then also who owns the rights to certain songs, certain things. I mean, then it comes to owning your masters or making sure your royalties are coming directly to you. And
fucking Taylor Swift,
there's so many,
with that too, yeah.
There's so many artists, past, present, and yet to exist that are going to be dealing and have dealt with so many of these legal issues that essentially come down to contracts and the recording industry. And record labels.
Yeah, it's a messy situation, but I just wanted to talk that out real quick because I think it is an interesting thing that is especially relevant in hip hop music because of how much sampling goes on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Steve,
Absolutely.
take us to your number 2, man. What do you got?
So my number 2, I guess I'll introduce it by referencing a sample. So we already talked about how Bob James' song Nautilus was sampled in Slick Rick's children's story. So it was also sampled in a very unique and intriguing way in my number 2 song, which is Eric B. and Rakim's Follow the Leader.
Follow me into a solo, get in the flow, and you can picture like a photo.
Damn, like that Rakim proves himself as the God MC for a reason. Like that's he gets that name for specifically, that purpose. I mean, it's 5 minutes of just incredible rapping, rhyme skill, delivery, flows, switch up, the way in which he rhymes. Like he's the pioneer and seemingly inventor of internal rhyming, where instead of just being like rhyming at the end of the word, like blah, 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 rat, blah, 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 hat, blah, 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 cat, it's like rhymes are inside of each of those lines too. And it's just absolutely incredible. I mean, it's 100 bars of just lyrical onslaught. In addition to the fact that he also made the beat, and he doesn't get a lot of credit for making the beats between him and Eric B. But yeah, I mean, Rakim is absolutely an incredible MC, producer, storyteller, lyricist, and this song is just, I don't know if it's even the pinnacle of Rakim's career, but it's damn sure the pinnacle lyrically of 1988.
Yeah, he's what draws you to his flow. Is just, there's just something different about him, just in terms of the cadence and just sort of also in terms of just the speed that he goes at. It's
immaculate.
Yeah.
And every single rapper that exists today exists because Rakim did it first. Like everybody was taking what he did. He set the template for everyone who came after in terms of switching up rhyme patterns and changing your flow within a verse and doing all those things. That was all Rakim. He did it first. He was who everyone emulated after that.
Yeah, his rhyme schemes are crazy. Like, Corey, you were talking about lyrically, like where Rakim is at in that era. And in the first verse, he has that alliteration between all the M's where he's like, music makes mellow, maintains to make melodies for MCs, motivates the breaks. Like all those M's is just incredible. But I also like towards the end of the song where he has a diss toward EPMD, in the fact that, they're another major duo of the era, Eric Sermon and Parrish. But, he says, stop drugging. A brother said, dig him. I never dug him. He couldn't follow the leader long enough, so I drug him. And it's definitely a slide diss toward EPMD because, they were definitely making their waves as another major duo of the era. But, Rakim kind of lays that to rest with that line as well. The song is absolutely incredible, top to bottom, lyrically, production-wise, delivery. It's definitely, in my opinion, like the best rap of 1988.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the art of rapping goes, Rakim is the king. And, I want to come clean about something right now. I did not choose...
Fucking better. Jesus. He reveals this while we're listening to the song.
I'm going to reveal it. I'm going to cop to it. So I did not choose an Eric B. and Rakim song. I thought...
Fucking shame.
I thought long and hard about including lyrics to Fury. Where I stand with Rakim, and this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, and I totally accept any criticism or, clapback that comes from this, but where I've always stood with him is I respect him more than I actually like him, and I feel the same way about, like, Eminem. I don't love their music all that much. I respect the absolute fuck out of them and what they are able to do with language and with the art form of rapping. I have nothing but the utmost praise for them. But at the same time, I just don't like it all that much. It doesn't resonate with me as much. That's the hot take.
I would agree that it's a hot take. I mean... Yeah, Eric B. and Rakim did not include them in the 1988 playlist very much means that playlist is one of your own opinions, which is awesome because that's exactly what these playlists are. And Rakim, you completely inverted both of those sound effects because Corey definitely said some womp womp shit with not including Eric being Rakim through and through. So.
I'm sorry. I used the wrong sound effect. That is my fault. I went with the hot take one.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. It's a hot take, but
it's a bit sad that you didn't do it.
Yeah, I stand by my decision, and they're still included in it because Steve included it, and
that's a cop out.
I respect it for being included. That's what I got to say.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
So I'll go to my number 2 pick right now, and what I chose for that was Public Enemy, Bring the Noise.
Bass, how low can you go? Death row, what a brother know.
Where I want to start with that song is I knew something from Public Enemy had to be included because I feel like It Takes a Nation of Millions, front to back, is the best record of the year, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
And that also made it very, very challenging for me to choose a individual song from the record. You know, I thought about Louder Than a Bomb a lot. I thought about Don't Believe the Hype. I thought about Party for Your Right to Fight. There are so many incredible songs. You know, Steve, you chose Night of the Living Bassheads. That's another incredible one. It just has so many bangers on it. And I ultimately settled on Bring the Noise. And, you know, it was a song that had a big part in me getting into hip hop. And this is going to be like the ultimate suburban white kid thing, but where it came from was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Hell yeah.
I used to play that game for hours, and I just had 2 songs that I would play like exclusively. Guerrilla Radio, Bring the Noise, just back to back. Constant rotation.
I don't think it's unfair to mention Tony Hawk because I don't think sometimes like soundtracks to, let's say, video games or even movies sometimes are given enough credit for introducing us to a lot of the music that we listen to.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, so I mean, that was why I ultimately settled on it. It had a personal connection for me there. Like I said, this record front to back is just absolutely incredible. But when I look at this song, you know, I think Chuck D's flow is just out of this world on this record. And this song especially, the beginning of the second verse, and I'm going to give this an effort here. Who knows how I'll do, but all right. So he starts with the second verse and he goes, never badder than bad because the brother is madder than mad at the fact that the corrupt like a senator, soul on a roll, but you treat it like soap on a rope because the beats and the rhymes are so dope. And just the rapid fire delivery of that, the way that he's doing it so quickly and then just ending it with like, that's why the beats and the rhymes are so dope. I just think it's outstanding and so indicative of everything that's great about hip hop, the way that it flows with the words and the way that it's braggadocio, the way that it calls out corrupt senators, like it's all there in that one introduction to the verse. And I just absolutely love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I also love the back and forth between him and Flavor Flav. This song is definitely one of their better songs in the record. You know, you can definitely hear that energy and that camaraderie between the both of them through and through on this song. It connects to something that we had talked about with Straight Outta Compton as far as being that sort of like introduction.
Yeah.
I mean, even though Public Enemy had been around, you know, before this album, this felt like the introduction to who we know of as Public Enemy for, you know, the rest of their careers.
Exactly. And then the next year they released Fight the Power for Spike Lee's. And then 1990 they released Fear of a Black Planet. And they just go on this run here where it seems like they are the most important hip hop group, the most important hip hop artists for a good like 3-year period there.
I mean, what do you?
Nah, completely.
In terms of like sort of even just subject matter, I feel like correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like they have a little bit of sort of that, you know, reality rap to them as well. And I don't know, I think they do it in a very different way, or at least I think Chuck D does it in a very different, like very, I think, I don't know if you want to say more artfully done, but in comparing to like N.W.A, like, I was just sort of thinking about that where like I feel like his lyrics are just incredibly impactful too, and as real as like sort of what they're talking about as say like N.W.A as well.
Absolutely. And I think the difference is that with N.W.A, they're almost presenting it as a first person narrative. Like they're a part of it because, Ice Cube created a character and Eazy-E actually was that guy.
Right.
Whereas Chuck D, I feel like, is almost from a third person omniscient social commentary observer type of thing, as opposed, but they do all have that kind of reality reporting on what's happening in that community. I think, Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that it was Chuck D who kind of coined the term as far as, hip hop being the CNN of the hood, because, it's definitely, they're, reporting a lot of the realities that are happening day in and day out, whether it's crack epidemic like in Night of Living Baseheads or police brutality and systemic oppression with Fight the Power. More not necessarily general, but more direct things like 911 is a joke whenever they did that song, and how, the response of 911 and emergency services in the Black community is dramatically slower than in other communities, especially in the 80s and 90s. So, yeah, without question, Public Enemy is definitely one of those groups that help to shed light on various realities that are existent that oftentimes you don't find a more balanced discussion about in mainstream media.
For sure. So I've already done my number one, and Steve, that leaves it up to you. And honestly, I am so incredibly curious because I've been going through it in my head as you've been announcing these, and I literally have no clue what it's going to be. I'm so pumped right now.
He's a fucking mystery man.
So, yeah, my number one song is a song that I feel is the most important song of 1988. And also thinking about the foundation of hip hop culture and, the purpose and principles in which the culture was founded on and the why behind that. You have somebody who, just as for a bit of context, this gentleman named Cornell Benjamin, known as Black Benji, who was a member of the Ghetto Brothers. He got murdered, and his murder, even though he was a peace ambassador between these gangs, his murder helped to incite what became a truce amongst all these gangs in the Bronx, and that truce helped to lay the foundation for other gangs like the Black Spades to be transformed into the Universal Zulu Nation, which then creates the culture of hip-hop. And so there was a song that was released in 1988 that I feel really connects directly with that spirit. And the song that I have for my number one pick of 1988 is the Stop the Violence Movement song, Self-Destruction. So yeah, that's definitely my number one song of 1988 for sure. First of all, it's the best hip hop supergroup you're gonna have of the entire era.
Yeah.
You got KRS-One, Kool Mo D, MC Light, Heavy D, Chuck D, Dougie Fresh, D Nice, Sonic is in it, and it's produced by the Bomb Squad, or I should say Hank Shockley of the Bomb Squad with D Nice. So I mean, it's just everybody came together and formed like Voltron for a song and a message that was so important for the culture, and it's still important. I mean, it raised money for the National Urban League. It raised over $100,000 for the National Urban League at the time. It also inspired a bunch of West Coast artists to do the same thing just within a year, to do a song called We're All in the Same Gang, where you had every major West Coast artist of the time, whether they were repping Bloods, Crips, whatever their gang with Latin Kings, it didn't matter. They all put down those flags or tied those flags together and, created a unity around that too. And so it was definitely an inspirational and motivational moment for hip hop culture and representative of the true essence of hip hop culture for sure. So yeah, Self-Destruction for me, I think is probably the most important and number one song of 88.
I can't disagree with that. That's an absolutely epic pick. And Steve, I'm so glad you shared the visuals with us, because I think the video is what really ties this together. So, folks at home will have this on our website, but you should also, go to YouTube, watch the visuals with this one as you listen to it, because it adds to the whole essence of the track throughout. All the imagery is just so poignant. And Steve, can you talk to us about the video a little bit? Do you know about how it came together?
I mean, I know the video in itself, they filmed it in Harlem. I know that much. But I mean, beyond that, I don't know exactly who the director of it was, but everybody, got together and, made it happen for sure. I mean, you could just see, I think they're in Morningside Park, and are just all, it's either Morningside Park or I honestly don't know. I got to look back and check, but
I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, man. I mean,
whatever was decided on that, like it just, for some reason, those visuals, staring straight at the camera, just head nodding, still sort of like almost stiff, but just like, which I think kind of drove home the seriousness of the message. And yeah, I feel like every pick in terms of like the imagery in that was impeccable. It was great. I'm very glad I just saw that music video, because it reminds you of just how important that sort of art form can be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, the MCs rapping in courtrooms and in jails and out on the street, and the pictures of them all together, you know, kind of promoting this message of unity. I think all of it is just so important and just adds to the song on a whole nother level.
And even just musically too, is, you know, a heavy sample of James Brown's Funky Drummer, which is probably the most sampled drum beat ever. And then they also take bits of Pass the Peas too from the JBs. Lyrically, it's there. Musically, it's there. The message is there. Everybody is coming together, all for the same purpose. You know, and that's something that I wish we could see right now. Like, it wouldn't be awesome if we had Kendrick Lamar, Drake, J. Cole, Kanye, Jay-Z, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, DaBaby, Lil Baby, all these folks on a track together, rapping about everything that we went through this past summer and are still going through right now. And it's a bit, you know, but no, we're not in that space. You know, we don't have that opportunity, unfortunately, at this time. But, you know, or no, we do have the opportunity, but we're not capitalizing on it. And so, you know, we needed somebody like KRS to pull this together. Now, granted, the whole reason why the song existed was because a kid or a fan was killed at a BDP concert. So BDP's Boogie Down Production. So they had a concert with them in Public Enemy, and a fan was killed there. And it was just after another member of BDP, Scott LaRock, was murdered. And so the biggest push came out of KRS-One's initiative to create a Stop the Violence movement. And, you know, people are killed by the police day in and day out. And we've got folks making songs about it here and there, but we really don't have the unity amongst the people who are the true influence makers in the culture like we did in this song. So it's definitely a template for what could be right now as well, too.
I think that's all of those reasons that you just kind of went through is I think a perfect, perfect explanation and honestly a perfect way to kind of top off a list. It's I don't know. I'm kind of like blown away after watching that video. That was really cool. I've never seen that before, so that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I've never seen that video before. That was great, Steve. Thanks for sharing, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think that about wraps it up. Do we have any final thoughts on 1988 that we haven't shared yet?
I mean, for me, I just think that as we move forward, I mean, it's 25, 30, 35, you know, as we keep moving forward, my thing is to always never forget where you come from, or we come from as the culture. And when it comes to hip hop, making sure that eras like 1988, 1994, you know, all these moments and you know, time periods in the culture are still reflected upon and revered, because, you know, they're important, not just for their time period, but, you know, again, like I said, you know, for where we are and where we're going.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I think that's such an important message for hip hop fans today. Like, do your homework, know where this stuff came from, go back and visit these songs. It's not all about what's coming out today, and what's coming out today is great. Don't get me wrong, but make sure, you know, if you are a hip hop fan, know this stuff. It's so important where it came from, and, you know, how it's grown over time.
Well, I mean, this was awesome. I mean, I know in terms of sort of going through these lists, 94 compared to 88, I always thought, because obviously I grew up listening to stuff mainly coming through the 90s, and being able to kind of explore this, I'm one of those assholes that hasn't gone back, and thankfully this kind of forced me to do that. I think I got to kind of agree with Steve here. This is, I really enjoy this. This era of hip hop might be up there. I think it might be my favorite thus far. Just through this exploration.
I definitely wouldn't go without shouting out, you know, other folks we didn't get to mention, like Ice-T, Kid and Play,
definitely,
MC Hammer. You know, we did mention, you know, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, Salt and Pepper, Too Short, LL Cool J, all these folks, the Jungle Brothers need their bit of shine as well, but, you know,
for sure,
unfortunately they didn't get to either of our top five.
And thank God for Steve, otherwise we wouldn't have had Eric B and Rakim, because Corey over here decided not to include a single one of their songs in his list, and well, So anyways, I just really wanted to get the sad trombone out again.
Yeah.
But no, anyways.
Steve, give us 2 honorable mentions. The 2 that were not talked about at all, 2 songs to add to it.
I would say Run DMC Beats to the Rhyme is my first, and Big Daddy Kane Set It Off would be my second.
All right, I got 2. I got Run DMC Run's House, and I got EPMD Let the Funk Flow.
That's real.
I got it. Those were the first 2 out.
Shout out to MC Light Paper Thin though.
Yeah, dude, MC Light as a Rock. What an album.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff.
Thank you so much for doing this again with us. I don't know. You two going back and forth. You guys are just bring a lot of information on this, so it's fucking awesome. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir.